let's collab, shall we? We're talking the champagne of Irish whiskey here. And a legendary whiskey bar. You already know this is going to be good. Let's drink some whiskey. Welcome to Whiskey and Whiskey. I'm the Whiskey Chaser Brian here in Christy's bar, Kilkenny. Hope your week has been good. Hope you're keeping well. All right, so another limited release here, and I know what you're thinking. Brian, why is it always limited releases? Well, it's not, okay? And that's just the way it goddamn is. And get over it. And get on board. We're a small nation, and we do limited. Look how limited I am. This is the Irishman Peated Red Ale Cask Finished Blended Whiskey from Walsh Whiskey. Now, sometime a while back, I put the call out on Facebook as to which whiskeys you, the viewers, might like to see me trying. And someone yelled one that I hadn't tried, but I thought, hey, it's rare enough to deserve a spot on the show. Unfortunately, when I came around to doing it, the bottle was, of course, sold out, and what I can imagine has sent off to the dungeons and attics of whiskey collectors worldwide. Shame. So you can see my predicament. Luckily for me, Dick Macks Pub in Dingle do a sample share online of their whiskeys. It's a neat little setup where you pick the whiskey you want to try, select the quantity and size, pay the price, and they ship it out to you in this cool little box. And these cool little sample sizes. I think this is a 50 ml sample, actually, to be honest, with a little barcode on it. So great idea if you're looking to try rare and exotic whiskeys that have long since sold out. And they have them in stock. So I've spoken before about Walsh Whiskey, explained what their blends are like, and I'll link that, I'll share a link to that video up here. I'm not gonna go back into that, but their blends are considered to be what was once referred to as the champagne of Irish whiskey, which is a blend of single malt and single pot still whiskies. So the Red Ale and Dick Macks Pub and Brewhouse, well, this is a bit of a legendary Irish pub, built in 1898 by Tom MacDonald and handed down to Richard MacDonald, who was known around those parts as Dick Mac. It's a historic pub nestled in the quiet streets of Dingle, County Kerry. You should see a photo of it. When you walk in, you're immediately transported back in time. The decor, I wouldn't imagine, has changed much in all those years. There's tiny snugs and to get lost in, creaky floorboards, and an absolute ton of whiskey on bowing shelves. Literally, they bow. There's so much weight on them with the whiskey. Been there. So the brewhouse itself was set up by Ozzy, Seamus and Dick Mac's grandson Finn, who decided to go back to some of their roots and bottle some of their own beer like in the old days. Eventually a brewhouse was set up next to Dick Mac's Pub, which is now located in a 250-year-old cowshed. The brewhouse itself has picked up a number of awards for its coffee stout and session IPAs. Now I've had those. Astounding, astounding. So this whiskey collaboration between Walsh Whiskey and Dick Mac Brewhouse, and it's the third such collaboration the two companies have done. Again, all their previous bottlings have long since sold out and fetch a healthy secondary price on the auction sites. We're talking bling, money. And when it comes to rarity, it doesn't get much rarer than this. 276 bottles only were released, and it's an interesting blend. Well, the whiskey itself is a triple distill blend of aged single malt and pot still whiskeys that are non-chill filtered, and then they are aged for an additional 9 months in a peated red ale cask from Dick Mac's Brewhouse and bottled at 50.1% ABV. Truth be told, I have absolutely no idea the age statement of any of the whiskies used in this release, only that it's matured in American oak bourbon casks and had a very limited public offering. I know that 276 bottles were produced, but I know some of them straight away went to the Irish Whiskey Society, and a few other clubs around the country got first shout. So not entirely sure exactly how many bottles made it to market total, but there were only 120 bottles available from James J. Fox's in Dublin, and it was around the 80 euro-ish mark. Let's get it in the glass. I have some of the sample left over, so we'll use that. Now, as is customary at this stage, before we do that, let's make absolutely certain that you're subscribed and your notifications are turned on to 100 or 10 or 11 or whatever you want to call it. You might consider giving me a thumbs up and sharing this content with your friends, family, and loved ones. The Whiskey Chaser thanks you in advance for your cooperation. And we pour. A healthy one this morning. So the whiskey itself, I have no idea of the total age of the whiskies or even the vatting breakdown, but it's a marriage of pot still and single malt whiskies, which was the champagne of Irish whiskey, blended Irish whiskey, aged in bourbon and then matured for a further 9 months after the initial maturation period in peated red ale casks, triple distilled, cask strength, 50.1% ABV, and roughly 276 bottle run total is what I'm told. So I've given this a minute or two to open up a little bit in the glass. Let's get it on the nose. And what a nose it is. Interesting. So I'm getting a lot of the malted notes that you would expect to get from a single malt whiskey, like a pear drop, your apple notes, more of a pear drop, kind of vanilla. There's a lot of that kind of at the fore. Then you're getting an interesting kick in behind it, which is kind of more the spiciness from the pot stills, I'm guessing, but it kind of comes across in the nose that it's quite creamy, if that makes sense. Or denser. A little bit of earthy vibes from the red ale cask. That kind of, it's not overly boozy. Like as if you were to walk into a pub and you get that smell in an Irish pub sometimes of a stout and an ale kind of, or a brew house, that kind of, there's not much of that. There's hints of it. It is there. A little bit of bitter notes coming through on the end, but the spice and the malt is what stand out the most to me in this particular release. So I'll have a little sup of it. Sláinte. Wow. Tropical fruit. Wow. The honey, the malt notes mixed with the spice and the pot still. I'm going to say it's a heavier blend towards the malted side of things, but what's interesting is the booziness that's coming from the ale. That is very much apparent on the palate. If you're looking for it, right? So I'm kind of going into this knowing that there's a red ale cask finish, right? So I am trying to pull out the benefit that the red ale, or we'll just call it ale cask, has brought to the flavor spectrum. And you get it, when you look for it, you get it, you pull it out, it combines with the sweetness. You're getting that boozy note that combines with the honey and the creaminess and the spice, and it's nice. I didn't mean for that to rhyme, but it is really, really something else now. I wasn't expecting that from a non-age statement type of whiskey. How flavorsome it is. That is not, I wouldn't say those are young whiskeys that are in that. It's not nosing like that, and it's not tasting like that. Another little sip, sláinte. It's very creamy. There's a little bit more malt now. I got on the palate that time, but the fruity notes from the pear, from the malt, from the pear, blah blah blah. Very good. Interesting enough, right? Okay, so I know it's a peated red ale cask, right? I would expect to be getting a bit smokiness. Maybe that's the kind of earthiness that I'm getting off of it. Could be. The booziness and the earthiness towards the end there, it's not in your face. It's not like you wouldn't think now that that was a peated, that had anything to do with peated whiskey. Maybe it's just me, maybe it's just the time of the day that I'm drinking this at. I don't know, but for me, I'm not getting a huge amount of smokiness or anything like that off that. I'm getting the spice, I'm getting the fruit notes from the malt, I'm getting a little bit of the booziness on the palate when I drink it, and also a touch on the finish. If you were to pick it apart, a more discerning palate, probably more discerning than mine, would certainly, I would say, I get a touch of a kind of smoky element, but I'm kind of putting that down to an earthiness to it. Anyway, I'm totally tearing it apart there, but stand by for my initial thoughts. First time drinking this, by the way. Well, sample. Cool packaging, by the way, guys. So my opinion on this, right, is that it's really good. The flavors deliver really nice, kind of softly boozy profile from the, ale casks. A little bit smoky on the finish, earthy, I would say, surprisingly lush, not overly complex, nor is it underwhelming. I think it's sitting good at the price point. It's something I would definitely go back to again and again. I think you would train your palate on this to appreciate and pull out the subtle nuances of a peated ale cask between the booziness and the peat. Now, obviously I did pay for this sample myself, and that's all paid for. I'm not being endorsed by anyone to say anything. All thoughts are definitely and most certainly my own. But when you look at it in total, it's a great little service from Macks. Pretty cool packaging. I would highly recommend checking them out. I'll leave a link to some of the website stuff below where you can check out all the information yourselves and go through the website. And I'm gonna have to go down to Dingle soon and visit. I have a little idea on the cards. Lads down in Macks, if you're watching this, you know, you might want to think about maybe rolling out the welcome mat. Might be down there in a couple of weeks. And if I am, let's collab and do a little video. I absolutely love what you're doing here with the packaging and the samples. Great job, great stuff. Keep it going, big fan. Irishman Whiskey, you guys, Walsh Whiskey, keep kicking ass. So shout out to the lads here in Christy's for letting me use the pub today. And of course, bringing down the bottling next to me, and respect for them letting me talk about another pub while I'm drinking in their pub. All right, that's it for me this week. I'm gonna keep it short and sweet. We'll see you all next week where we take on more limited whiskeys here on Whiskey and Whiskey. I'm the Whiskey Chaser Brian, and we'll see you next time. Sláinte.